this is not a race. I think we try to run our life like a race, that we're trying to beat other people. But end of the day, I mean, the only measurement we need to measure ourselves against is ourselves, of, our growth, of our relationships. Where were we yesterday? Where were we last year? And have I grown? Have my relationships grown? That's all that matters.
Investing for retirement takes time, patience, and consistency. Eventually, you'll reach a point where you don't need to contribute any more money to hit your retirement goals, and that's what we call Coast Fire. On our Coast Fire segment today, we're going to interview Tae Kim from the Financial Tortoise YouTube channel. Tae hit this Coast Fire milestone in his late 30s. Today, we're going to learn how he accomplished this family financial goal and how this affects their family journey going forward. Welcome to the show, Tae.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
I'm glad you could be here and share your story. We appreciate you and all that you do on your YouTube channel. I'm a big fan of it. I have a series of questions to start off the interview. I call them the Coast Fire 5. These are short, quick answers to help people understand where you are now. So the first question is, how much do you have invested for retirement?
I would say around average ballpark number, like around 2 million.
2 million.
Everything, yeah.
Awesome. That's incredible. And how old are you and your spouse today?
I'm 42. My wife is 39.
Awesome. Very cool. That is incredible. Now, based on your Coast Fire calculations, how much will you have in retirement if you don't contribute anything else going forward?
Yeah, so I ran this number yesterday, right before this podcast. I think if we work for another 20 years, I think 5% interest, I think it's around like 5 million, I think.
That's incredible.
Give or take,
Awesome.
right?
That's incredible. Yes, of course, give or take. There's so many variables. Nobody knows what the future is. This is for entertainment purposes only, everybody.
Yep.
So number 4, then, how much income would this potentially provide you in retirement?
Yeah, I guess if you use just the 4% rule, about 200.
200K. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And then the final question of this Coast Fire 5, how much income do you need to live comfortably today for your family?
Yeah, today, so our overhead expenses ranges between like 80 to about 100 annually.
Oh, got it. So you guys have 2 kids. We talked about that before the top of the show. So right now you're spending 80 to 100K, and with this projection, you'd have double that in the future with inflation and included. That's pretty incredible. So now that we know your numbers and your situation, talk to us about your backstory a little bit. When did you start investing, and what got you motivated to build this nest egg that you have?
Yeah, so my story is more of, I made all the mistakes in my 20s and tried to correct that in my 30s. So I guess the pivot point was, I got married when I was 30 years old. And then I had a career before that. I was in the military. And then I went to business school and transitioned into a corporate finance career. But then right when I got married, that was kind of a wake-up moment for me, where I realized I didn't save much. I wasn't really good with money most of my 20s. I also spent pretty much everything I had on a wedding. We had a very expensive wedding. So barely had anything saved up in retirement or just in our bank account. And then my wife and I, we went to a friend of ours introduced to Dave Ramsey, Financial Peace University. So we went through the whole shebang. And then at the time, we had over $100,000 in student debt combined. So, according to Dave Ramsey's philosophy, we went gazelle intense, paid off our student debt in about 3.5 years. And he really helped us at just kind of reframe our perspective on money. Because up until that point, I think a lot of it is socialization, but at the same time, like growing up under immigrant parents. So my family came from Korea. I was 9 when I came over. And, being blue collar workers, they couldn't really give me a lot of guidance on how to manage money as an adult. So their whole thing was, hey, just study hard, go to college. And then it looks like everyone else seems to be doing well, doing that. So why don't you do that? And then, so I came into the working world without a lot of foundation on, just how to invest, how to budget, all those things. So those are things I had to learn in my 30s. And thankfully, through the Financial Peace University. And then after we paid off our student debt, I think, you kind of move up the financial ladder of like, okay, what next after, you got some good financial habits down, you paid off, high interest debt. We started getting exposed to the financial independence movement. Started listening to Choose FI and read Jill Collins' The Simple Path to Wealth. And then that's where, the money that we used to pay down the debt and the financial habits that we developed in creating a budget, living frugally. And then thankfully both of us had, really good jobs with good income. So we started just dumping as much as we could into investing into the market with the intention of pursuing financial independence. And with the whole financial independence movement, the great thing is it gives you a framework on the next target, like a next milestone. Because before, you're just saving and saving, but you're not really sure like how far you are from retirement, or do you have enough? Whereas I think, the whole 4% rule, 25 times your expenses, those things just give you a good framework. You don't necessarily have to follow it, but it just kind of gives you a good target. You could see kind of like, oh, that is the next milestone I want to try to hit. So thankfully, with good income and good financial habits, we were able to save at our high points of saving up to 50% of our income, which was really helpful in building up a sizable, investment account. And then after about 10 years of my day job, I was a finance director. So did a lot of, boring Excel spreadsheet, running financial models, projections, stuff like that. Did that for about 10 years. And then in my late 30s, I got the itch to, I guess, try something different. So I wanted to try becoming a middle-aged YouTuber. So that was my next transition in my career. And achieving co-step-fi, we didn't hit financial independence when I left my job, but we hit co-step-fi, and I think that gave me a lot of confidence, both my wife and I. The just a comfort level that we could take this risk and it'll be okay.
That's incredible. Now you worked as a finance director, you said, and then your wife was working, is still working. How does that work?
So she was a registered nurse.
Mm-hmm.
She worked she was a neonatal ICU nurse. She did that for over 10 years as well. So we kind of did it in little staggers. So I left my day job first, and then she went part-time after that, about like a few months later, and then she eventually left her job as well. And then she's pursuing her own adventure. She's studying to go back to school to kind of pursue her own reinvention. Achieving co-step-fi, I think, just gave us the comfort level. I think a lot of people in financial independence space, we tend to be conservative. I think you have enough nest egg, but we're always afraid that we don't have enough. And I think what was interesting was when I started pursuing more of an entrepreneurship route and I started encountering, other entrepreneurs, like a lot of people were taking risks with like no cushion or like barely any cushion. And I was like, oh, like even if, let's say our endeavors didn't pan out, it's okay, right? Because like, we do have cushions. So I think it's kind of similar story to you, like after I think I've heard you talk about how you went through that framework of making that transition, and then like when you run the numbers, you're like, what's the worst case scenario? You just go back to what you were doing before.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's a tough point for people that are in this situation where, as you talked about, your parents saw, hey, get that college education, keep working hard and growing that career. And I think that my upbringing was a similar fashion. And I think you get to a point where maybe you're asking that question, well, how much is enough then for me to say, can I step back? And what are the benefits of me doing that step back versus continuing to hard charge? So I got to ask you, you have a very large nest egg. Did you struggle with, well, we're almost to fire or fat fire or whatever version you want to call it. Why don't I just keep going on my corporate career? Talk to me about that mind struggle that you probably went through.
It was definitely a scenario. So we went through a lot of scenarios about where we want to go with our life. So for me personally, like after about 10 years of working in my job, I think I got to a point where I could envision where my career would go for the next 5 to 10 years. So working in the corporate finance world, like I jumped into that arena with the ultimate goal of wanting to be a CFO of like a large organization. That was like my ultimate goal. Like, and I would sit in these board meetings, and then one of my responsibilities was like putting together the projection slides for the quarterly, reports to our board members, and then our CFO would be, sitting right next to me, and I would just, point out certain numbers we should highlight, and then I think it was like I had a moment where I was like, if I keep doing this, what I'm doing right now, like I would just be moving seats over in 5 years with like a little higher salary, but I'm essentially doing similar things. And for me, I think that was kind of a, not to say like that's not what I say, like I don't want that. It was more like it gave me an opportunity to ask a question. Is like, is that what I want? Or there's some other things I want to explore in my life? And that's where I think I gave myself the permission to say, like, if I could wave a magic wand and try something crazy and something different, what would that look like? And the other thing too is, we ask ourselves the question is like, we're very privileged to be in a good career. So then for me, the other thing that was going through my mind was, worst case scenario, I can go back to what I was doing before. But if I don't try, this at the time, like I was thinking of a lot of things, and then YouTube was happening to be one of the things in my mind. And I'm like, who am I to think I can get on YouTube, right? Like some middle-aged guy who's gonna want to hear from me, right? And
I resemble that remark, sir.
yes. Right. Yeah. But yeah, so I mean that was one of the things that I really I think a scenario that I went through. So yeah, I mean, to your question, like, did I think about staying? Yes, because I saw that, like, if we ran the numbers and I did this for 5 to 10 more years, we'll have a lot more, and then I could fully say I am financially independent. But at the same time, like, would I really enjoy that process for next to 5, 10 years? And that's a valid question. I think we could reframe it however we want to. And, at a certain point, you just have to make a decision. And for some people, I think that might be a better decision because maybe, they're enjoying that career, and then there's nothing inkling for them that's like, hey, I want to try something different. But for me at the time, I think it was just kind of brewing in my mind more and more about, this is something that I wanted to try. And to be honest, like, having worked in, like, going to, I went to business school, worked in this kind of a corporate environment for a while. I think I was fascinated when I remember going to this conference. You and I both go to this conference called FinCon. I went there like 5 years ago, first time. And that was like one of the first conferences I actually paid out of pocket to go. And I was like, all right, let me try it. Like, let me go check this out. A lot of people are talking about it. I think you talked about it in your podcast as well. And I was like, all right, let me go see this. And then it like blew my mind away. I remember sitting in one of these conference work sessions, and people were like, I make money off of YouTube. I'm like, what? Like, I thought that was like for cat videos. Like, how is that even possible? So I think that just kind of like planted a seed in my mind. And I'm like, wow, is that possible? Like, how are people doing it? Can I do that? And I think that just kind of brewed in my mind until it got to a tipping point where I'm like, all right, like, I got to give it a shot. And then thankfully, I think, the whole concept of Coast FI gave both my wife and I the financial kind of assurance that, hey, worst comes to worst, we're okay. And in planning for the transition, like, we actually saved up about 2 years worth of cash in our bank account, so that, that was one of the things my wife, I was telling my wife, was like, if I make $0 from this endeavor, it's okay. Like, we still have enough cushion. And I promise I'll start taking some contract work if I am not bringing any money from this. I'm sure somebody wants some financial modeling done, So yeah, but yeah, I mean, I think the question that you asked is very valid, and those are things that we really went through in our mind and scenarios. So
I love that. Well, talk to me about some aspects of your life now outside of work. I know that you're probably, correct me if I'm wrong, you're probably not maxing out your hours worked each week of 60 hours, slugging away on this YouTube channel. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I'm assuming you're spending other portions of your week doing other things that are also an important part of who Tae is as a father, or as somebody who's pursuing other hobbies. Talk to me about what you've been able to do after transitioning outside of full-time work to your new life.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so I have 2 kids. I have 8 and 10. My wife and I, we've been married for 13 years. And one of the things that I was very thankful for when I transitioned to this kind of a YouTube career was the opportunity to, I wouldn't say like, I guess I work less. I don't know if a lot of entrepreneurs, like we tend to work more because we're thinking about it
Hmm.
more.
Sure.
But I think it's the priority on like, before, work would be the main, like you hear that analogy about the big rocks inside the jar, and then the sand fills in the rest. So before, the work would be the big rocks, and then I had to kind of fill everything else around it. Like my work schedule was a priority, and then I would fit in like when I would hang out with the kids, when I would spend time with my wife. But now I could flip it around, and say, okay, like dropping the kids off at school, picking them up from school, spending time with my wife, going on family events. That's the priority. Those are the big rocks. I fit those in first, and then I can, the work kind of fills the rest of the empty spaces. But yeah, I don't know, the number of hours that I work. I kind of joke around how I feel like I'm like working more than I did before, but I think a lot of that is, I mean, I'm sure you could, relate to like,
Hmm.
it's your own kind of your own baby, so you spend more time thinking about it. You just, like before, when I was done with the board deck, I was done. Like I'm not gonna look at that again. It's not like I'm thinking about how to make the slide deck even better. Now I'm just like, oh, like I want to think about how do I make the videos better, and it's constantly in the back of my mind.
Yeah, and it's fun for you. You're having a good time with it.
Right.
It's challenging and creative and fun, correct?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think like I never saw myself as a creative person. Having worked, like, my previous career was in the military and working in finance. I mean, like I was a number cruncher. Like that's all I
Hmm.
did. Like everything was logic. And then one of the, I guess, biggest stretch for me was like looking at a video and then like, how do I create a video that is like both appealing, informative, aesthetically pleasing. Like those are things I never thought about in my life. Like I bought my first camera like when I left my day job, and I was like, how do I turn this thing on? And then I was like, why is it only taking pictures? How do I take the videos? Like those were like the struggles that I went through. But it was, I mean, it was. Now I think back, and it's like it was amazing. Just kind of like it stretched that other, like we have two sides of the brain. Like that creative side, like I'd never stretched that side of my brain. I realized how like, like how fixed it was. So that was great in that sense. How it stretched me and grew me in a lot of different ways that I didn't know I was even interested in.
I love that. I love that. And now with your business, you've grown it to a good size, and you're helping a lot of people. You talked about $80 to $100,000 a year you guys spend as a family. Is this and your wife's pursuit? Is this enough to pay for your life's expenses, or are you guys still dipping into the savings to make it work now?
Yeah, thankfully, I mean, the income from the business is enough to cover our expenses. Yeah.
That's great.
So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like, and I think Jill Collins talked about this too. How like after when he quit his job, he took like a 3 year sabbatical with his daughter. His net worth actually increased. So then it was kind of like that was like that was the kind of the crazy thing is like the net worth from when I left my job to net worth now, you would think it would dip, but actually, thankfully the market has done well and it's increased, and we didn't thankfully had to sell any investments. The cash cushion and the income was enough.
That's incredible. And now with that Coast Fire accumulation, is this a combination of tax deferred, taxable accounts, post tax or pre tax, post tax, and taxable, or is it a group of those, or how do you structure it?
Yeah, like everything. I guess it's kind of mixed. It's real estate is in there too.
Ah, okay.
So yeah, real estate, primary, rental, taxable, brokerage account. Yeah, it's just they're all in different accounts. Yeah, here and there. So
Very good diversification then. I see.
yeah, I guess good diversification, and
Yeah.
then haven't done any withdrawals. So I've thought about like what would be the sequence of withdrawals, but
Mhm.
thankfully I haven't had to get to that point yet. Yeah,
You don't have to worry about it yet. Awesome.
yeah.
Now, one thing you've been able to gain is a flexibility with your new venture as well,
Mhm.
and it sounds like you're going to be experiencing some seasonal travel with the family. Talk to us about that adventure.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the big bucket lists in our family has been to just do a bit of traveling, extended traveling, slow travel. The name of my channel is Financial Tortoise. We do everything slowly. So we've been wanting to do some slow travel. So This coming year, we'll be doing some slow travel starting in Europe. So we'll be pulling the kids out of school for about, for the semester. And then, just haven't only part of in Europe I've been to is the UK. So we have some friends there that we're gonna visit and get to see, and so we're very excited, kind of scared at the same time that family time is good, but at the same time, at a certain point, is like too much family time.
Need a little break too.
So so then our grand vision is like, we'll do this for a year. Who knows? After 3 months, we're like, all right, you guys went back to school. Like this, we can't do this anymore.
I'm glad you baked in some reality to it. Now you mentioned slow travel and your site being, or your YouTube channel being Financial Tortoise. Do you think our society in general is missing a little bit of slowness with regard to our pace in life in our society?
I mean, I think there's seasons in our life, right? So both my wife and I think there was times when we were, working full time and trying to maximize our income as much as possible. And during those times, I mean, kids were young as well. So I think the pace was fast. And I think, if you think about it, slow is also privilege, right? Like the choice to be able to go slow is also privilege. So that we're also aware of that and be thankful of that. So understands, I could talk about like, we should try to slow down and smell the roses, but certain people, it's just that's not an option for everybody. So we want to be cognizant of that. But in general, I think when I look at it from a financial perspective, I think I talk about this a lot on my channel, how I'm the ultimate culprit of this in my 20s, when someone told me, hey, if you save and invest in the market and wait 20 years, you will build wealth. And I'm like, 20 years? Like, you're talking to a 22-year-old Tae. I'm like, that's not enough. Like, I want to be rich tomorrow. I want to be rich next week. So I think from a financial perspective, this is where, I think, true sustainable wealth takes time. Just like anything, to build a healthy relationship takes time. So I think in that sense, I think it's a philosophy that I think we should try to incorporate into our life, especially if in finances, if you can control it. There's no need to try to, get allured by sexy, get rich quick schemes. I mean, there's a reason why we get into it is because we want to try to move fast. I want to try to get rich quickly. I want to try to, I want to become a millionaire by the end of this year, versus the message of like, live below your means, save and invest into the market, be okay with 6%, 7%, 8% return, and just wait. Like nobody wants to hear that, right? But so I think in that sense that, from a financial perspective, I feel like we can have a little bit more of that. And then, if we can incorporate more of the slowness in our lives, I think that would be great. I think it just, life is, this is not a race. I think we try to run our life like a race, that we're trying to beat other people. But end of the day, I mean, the only measurement we need to measure ourselves against is ourselves, of, our growth, of our relationships. Where were we yesterday? Where were we last year? And have I grown? Have my relationships grown? That's all that matters. So
excellent advice, Tae. I really appreciate it. He's giving this type of advice and type of guidance on his excellent YouTube channel, Financial Tortoise. Tell people where they can connect with you and why they should subscribe.
So I have a YouTube channel, Financial Tortoise. So I talk about all things, as Andy mentioned, slow money, so if this is something that interests you, come and, check it out, so we don't talk about fast money. It's if that's not what you want, then sorry, I'll be a big disappointment.
There's plenty of that on YouTube. We're showing the other side here today. Tae, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
Want to see how close you are to Coastfire? Well, check out our free Coastfire calculator right on our website at marriagekidsandmoney.com. You can access it with the links below. You insert a little bit of information, hit the calculate button, and see how close you are to hitting Coastfire. Check it out.